My name is Sherry Stone. I'm 28 years old, and until a few months ago, I thought I was building a forever kind of love. Jack Miller was the man I believed I'd grow old with, calm, ambitious, a little vain, but charming in that way that made people naturally gravitate toward him. We met in our mid-20s, when I was just starting my small bakery business, and he was switching careers trying to prove himself in corporate marketing. I still remember the first time he came into my bakery dressed in a wrinkled shirt, pretending to look at pastries while asking for my number. He had that kind of confidence that made ordinary moments feel cinematic. At first, we were inseparable. We talked about dreams, about traveling, about one day, owning a cozy little home outside the city. He told me I was the most genuine person he'd ever met, and for a long time, I believed it. When he was unemployed after quitting his first job, I covered the rent for 6 months. I never complained. I cooked, cleaned, stayed up, helping him rewrite his resume because that's what you do when you love someone. You lift them. But somewhere between those nights of ramen dinners and his new fancy job, something changed. He started making little jokes about me, not mean, but sharp enough to sting. "You never dress up anymore, Sherry. You don't really care about style, do you?" He'd say it with a grin, but the message always landed. At first, I brushed it off. I told myself he was just stressed, that we were growing, maturing, figuring things out. But the cracks were forming. I still remember one night at his friend's birthday party. The music was loud, lights dim, laughter spilling through every corner of the house. I had stepped outside to take a call from a client, and when I came back through the kitchen hallway, I heard my name. Jack's voice. "Sherry's great," he was saying. "She's solid, you know. I guess I just got tired of dating women who made everything a roller coaster. Sherry's stable, safe." Someone laughed and asked, "So you think you settled?" And then just like that, his voice casual, easy. "Maybe, but hey, stability's underrated." The laughter that followed felt like knives scraping glass. I stood frozen behind the wall, unable to breathe. My heart didn't even break. It just sank heavy and silent, like it knew this moment was proof of something I'd been too scared to admit. That night I asked him if something was wrong, if maybe he felt distant. He didn't even look up from his phone. "You're overthinking again," he said. "Everything's fine." It became a pattern, my intuition, whispering his words, brushing it aside. "You're too sensitive. You're paranoid." And every time I'd shrink a little more just to keep the peace. I told myself love meant endurance, that couples who last don't run at the first sign of trouble. So I stayed even when I felt myself disappearing. By our 4th year, I started saving quietly for a down payment on a small house. It had a porch wrapped around the front and an open kitchen, the kind of place I used to sketch in the corners of my notebooks as a teenager. I wanted to surprise him. I imagined his face lighting up, his arms around me, our Sunday mornings spent with coffee and sunlight. But Jack didn't talk about the future anymore. He talked about status, about people his age already buying condos, about how influencers lived. He scrolled through Instagram, sighing over luxury cars and curated vacations. He used to look at me like I was enough. Now he looked past me like he was measuring how much better his life could be without saying it aloud. And then came the day that changed everything. He said he was going on a guy's weekend trip to the lake. I didn't question it, not because I was naive, but because I wanted to believe there was still something pure left between us. I even helped him pack, folded his shirts tucked in his toiletries, slipped a little note into his bag that said, "Have fun, come home safe." He didn't notice the note. As he zipped up his suitcase, he paused, eyes glancing at me like I was part of the furniture. Then, with a half smile, he said the words that burned everything down. "You should be grateful I even settled for you." No hesitation, no irony, just calm like he was stating a fact. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there. In that silence, something inside me stopped loving him. When he walked out the door that afternoon saying, "Don't wait up," I knew deep down it wasn't just a trip, it was an ending. But I didn't know yet that the worst part wasn't losing him. It was realizing I'd been losing myself for years without noticing. When the door closed behind Jack, the apartment felt strangely hollow, like it was holding its breath. I sat there for hours, just staring at the folded blanket he'd left on the couch, the half-empty mug on the counter, the faint trace of his cologne hanging in the air. It's funny, you never realize how heavy silence is until it's all you have left. For the first 2 days, I went through the motions, opened the bakery, smiled for customers, laughed at the usual morning chaos. But every time I caught my reflection in the display window, I saw a woman pretending to be fine. At night, the words he'd said, "You should be grateful I even settled for you," kept echoing. Not in anger, just disbelief. By Saturday evening, I still hadn't heard from him. No texts, no calls. That wasn't unusual. Jack was bad at keeping in touch. He said it like a personality trait, not a choice. So I told myself not to overthink. That illusion lasted until 10:14 p.m. I was curled up on the couch, half watching a movie, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Dara, my closest friend. No words, just a photo. Jack, laughing, wine glass in hand, sitting at a sunlit vineyard table across from a woman with long auburn hair, her hand resting comfortably over his. Even before Dara's next text came through, I knew who it was. Tessa Gray, the ex he swore was toxic and completely out of the picture, the one he'd blocked then quietly unblocked when I wasn't looking. For a moment, I just stared at the image, not blinking, not breathing. It wasn't anger that filled me first. It was quiet understanding, like the final puzzle piece clicking into place. He hadn't gone to a lake house. He'd gone back to the one person who made him feel like he was still the center of attention. I didn't text Dara back. I didn't call Jack. I didn't even cry. Instead, I stood up, walked into our bedroom, and opened the closet. Half his clothes hung there, pressed, color-coordinated, a reflection of the life I'd helped him keep together. I grabbed an empty suitcase from under the bed and started folding my own things instead. Every shirt I packed felt like a layer of myself I was reclaiming. My hands were steady, my breath calm, not rage resolve. When I was done, I sat on the edge of the bed, the same spot where he'd said those awful words, and whispered to the room, "You're right, Jack. I should be grateful, but not for you." That night, I slept for the first time in months without waking up to anxiety or self-doubt. By Sunday morning, I had a plan. I found a small, one-bedroom rental across town. Nothing fancy, just quiet. The kind of place where I could think without walking on eggshells. I filled out the online application before I even brushed my teeth. When Jack came home that night, I was ready not with tears or questions, but with clarity. He walked in like nothing had happened, dropped his bag by the door, kicked off his shoes, and collapsed onto the couch. "God, I'm exhausted," he said, rubbing his temples. "Those guys drank me under the table." I looked up from my laptop, my tone even. "You don't have to lie, Jack." He froze mid-yawn. "What are you talking about?" I turned my screen toward him, the vineyard photo glowing in the dim light. "You weren't at the lake. You were with Tessa." His face didn't crumble with guilt. It tightened with annoyance. "It's not what it looks like. We just ran into each other. It was lunch. You were holding hands." He shrugged, eyes narrowing. "It was emotional. We were reminiscing. You're reading way too much into it. You lied about where you were going. Because you'd overreact, I needed closure. You don't understand what that's like." I just stared at him, calm, detached, like I was watching someone else's scene unfold. "You cheated," I said quietly. "No," he snapped. "You're being dramatic. This is why we can't talk. You twist everything." He was pacing now, defensive, irritated. The same rhythm he always fell into when he was cornered. I stood up slow and deliberate. "We're done, Jack." He stopped pacing. "Wait, what?" "You don't have to explain anything. I'm not going to scream or beg. I'm just done." He blinked as if I'd spoken in another language. "You're really walking away after everything I've given you." I smiled sadly. "Everything you gave me came with insults and conditions. I'm finally giving myself something better." He scoffed. "Wow, so you're throwing away 4 years because of one picture." I didn't answer. I picked up my phone, grabbed my suitcase, and walked to the door. Behind me, he muttered something under his breath, maybe a curse, maybe a plea. I didn't care. The lock clicked softly behind me, and for the first time in years, I felt weightless. Outside, the night air was cool, steady, unbothered, everything. He wasn't. I looked up at the apartment window that used to feel like home and whispered to myself, "Never again." Moving out wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. I'd already been halfway gone long before I packed that suitcase. I spent the next few days in a short-term rental, a small studio with peeling paint and a view of the streetlights instead of a skyline. But it was mine. No tension in the air, no cold silences, no footsteps pacing behind closed doors. Just quiet. I didn't block Jack's number. Not because I wanted to hear from him, but because I wanted him to know that I simply didn't care enough to cut him off. That was the difference between revenge and release. 2 days passed before he broke the silence. "Jack, so you're just not going to talk to me after everything?" I stared at the message, the tiny read receipt flickering underneath, and left it on scene. That night, another text. "Jack, I made a mistake, okay, but nothing happened. You're blowing things out of proportion like you always do." That line, "like you always do," made me smile, not out of humor, but recognition. He was still playing the same game. Deflect, dismiss, diminish. By day 3, he called. I didn't answer. The voicemail came in 2 minutes later. Sherry, I don't know why you're being like this. I messed up, but you're not even giving me a chance to explain. I thought you loved me. That sentence, "I thought you loved me," hit different. Because I did. I loved him through failure, through doubt, through humiliation. But love wasn't supposed to cost your self-respect. I deleted the voicemail without listening to the rest. By the end of the week, his tone had shifted. "You're acting like a child. Real adults talk through things. They don't run away." I didn't run. He just couldn't comprehend that silence could be a decision, not avoidance. I started to notice something strange in those quiet days. Peace has a sound, soft, steady healing. Every morning, I'd brew coffee, open my laptop, and let sunlight flood the tiny space. I felt lighter, whole. My friends noticed it too. Dara came over one afternoon bringing takeout and a raised eyebrow. "He's been texting me," she said. "He wants to know if you're seeing anyone." I laughed. "He only asks because he can't stand not being the center of someone's world." She nodded. "You're handling this too calmly. It's scaring him." "Good," I said. "Let him sit with the quiet." A week later, Jack's mother called. Her voice was polite at first, then pleading. "Sherry, honey, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Jack told me everything. He's heartbroken. He misses you." I wanted to say no, he misses control. But instead I said gently, "Thank you, Mrs. Miller. I hope he's well." And that was it. That night, I sat on the floor of my new apartment eating instant noodles out of the cup and realized something profound. I was finally living a life that didn't revolve around someone else's moods. The quiet didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. 2 weeks passed, and I started seeing real change, not in Jack, but in myself. I stopped checking my phone. I stopped replaying conversations in my head. And for the first time in years, I stopped apologizing to myself for things that weren't my fault. Then one afternoon, I met with Dara for coffee again. She looked uneasy. "There's something you should know," she said carefully. "Jack didn't just run into Tessa. That whole weekend. It was planned. Her cousin owns that winery." I just nodded. "I know," I said softly. I knew the moment I saw the photo. "You're not angry." "No." I stirred my coffee slowly. The cheating wasn't the betrayal. The betrayal was realizing how little I mattered to him before it even happened. That night I lay awake thinking about those words. "You should be grateful I even settled for you." Maybe he was right in his own twisted way, because that sentence was the last gift he ever gave me the truth. It showed me who he really was and who I refused to be. The next morning I called my real estate agent and said, "I'm ready to buy the house. Not our house, mine." When I got the call that my mortgage was approved, I didn't scream or cry. I just sat there, phone in hand, smiling softly to myself. Because for the first time in 4 years, I was making a decision that had nothing to do with Jack. The house was small, just outside the city, with a porch that wrapped around the front like an embrace. The same porch I once imagined us sitting on together with coffee in hand. Now I only saw me. No comparisons, no apologies, no waiting for someone to come home angry or distant. Just peace. I didn't tell Jack about it. I didn't post it. I didn't owe him the satisfaction of knowing what I'd built without him. But of course, silence has a way of traveling. It had been about 3 weeks since I walked away when the first wave of messages began again. His tone was different this time. Not angry, desperate. "Jack, I know I hurt you. Please, Sherry. Can we talk, Jack?" It wasn't supposed to go like this. I was confused. I made a mistake. He followed. With a voice note, a long, rambling apology that sounded more like a man afraid of losing his audience than losing his love. I thought the grass was greener, but it wasn't. It was just fake. "You were the real thing. I see that now." I listened to every word, then hit delete. Not out of spite, but out of finality. When I stopped responding, the tone changed again. "Jack, wow, you're really heartless." "Jack, you're not even going to forgive me after everything I did for you." There it was, the old Jack resurfacing. The arrogance, the victimhood, the entitlement disguised as heartbreak. I left it all on red. The next day, one of his friends texted me. "He's miserable. Can't you at least talk to him once he's saying he can't eat or sleep?" I typed out a reply. He ate just fine when he was with Tessa, but I never sent it, because responding would mean he still mattered. And he didn't, not anymore. Weeks went by, like that. Messages, calls, guilt trips, pity ploys, all fading into the same background noise. Until one evening, I got a message from an unknown number. "Heard you bought a house. Congrats." No name, but I didn't need one. Jack. I ignored it. An hour later, "So you just cut me out and move on like I never existed. That's cold, Sherry." I smiled faintly, because that's exactly what I had done. Cut him out not in anger, but in healing. He wasn't my villain anymore. He was just someone I once mistook for love. A few days later, Dara dropped by with takeout and gossip, her usual therapy delivery combo. She plopped down on my couch, eyes wide. "Guess who got dumped?" she said. "Jack," I guessed without looking up. "Yep, 2 weeks in." Apparently, Tessa called him emotionally exhausting. I couldn't help but laugh, a real light laugh that startled me a little. "The irony writes itself," I said. Dara tilted her head, studying me. "You really don't care anymore, do you?" I thought for a second, then shook my head. "No, I don't. I'm not angry. I'm just free." That night, I sat out on the porch of my new home, a cup of tea warming my hands, the air crisp with the start of autumn. I watched the sky turn from orange to lavender, and for the first time, I wasn't waiting for anyone. No apology, no closure, no validation. Just me, my breath steady, and the quiet hum of peace that filled the space where chaos used to live. People say silence is empty, but they're wrong. When you've spent years begging to be heard, silence is a symphony. I didn't need Jack to admit he was wrong. His absence was confession enough. And in that stillness, something in me healed. The first morning I woke up in my new house, sunlight spilled across the floor like a quiet blessing. For a few seconds, I didn't move. I just lay there listening to the stillness. No phone buzzing, no footsteps pacing, no sarcastic voice saying, "You're overthinking again." Just peace wide, unbroken peace. I made myself coffee and sat out on the porch. The wood was cool under my bare feet and the air smelled faintly of rain. I closed my eyes and whispered, "This is mine." Not something I had to earn through someone else's approval, not something that could be taken away with a cruel sentence. Just mine. Later that week, I took a photo, nothing fancy. Just the porch, bathed in sunset light, and posted it on my bakery page with the caption, "New beginnings taste like peace." That night, Jack texted, "Jack. So you bought the house anyway, Jack. Was that your plan all along, to cut me out and pretend I never existed?" I stared at his words for a long moment, then locked my phone and set it aside. He still didn't get it. He still thought the silence was punishment, but it wasn't. It was liberation. A few days later, Dara told me what everyone else was too polite to say directly. "He's a mess," she said. "Tessa dumped him. Apparently she called him clingy, said he was obsessed with control." I smiled faintly. "Sounds familiar." "You're not happy about it?" she asked. "No," I said, shaking my head. "Happiness would mean I still cared. I just feel nothing, and I think that's better. Because by that point, I wasn't living in reaction to him anymore. I wasn't proving anything. The victory wasn't that he lost me, it was that I finally found myself." Business at the bakery started picking up again. Customers noticed. I smiled more, laughed easier. Even my staff said the place felt lighter. I guess energy really does change when you stop dragging ghosts into the room with you. One evening, as I was closing up, I noticed a young couple sitting by the window, the girl giggling, while the guy leaned in to steal a bite of her pastry. For a split second, I felt that old ache, the memory of what I thought I had. Then it passed. Because I knew something now that I hadn't before. Love without respect isn't love. It's dependency dressed as devotion. I drove home under a violet sky, radio low hair, down feeling something I hadn't felt in years' ease. I didn't have to explain myself to anyone. I didn't have to earn gentleness. I could just be. That night, my phone buzzed again, a new number, but I knew who it was before I even opened the message. Unknown. "I've been thinking about you. I miss us." I deleted it. The next morning, there was another one. Unknown. "Please, Sherry, I just want to talk. I know I ruined everything." I didn't respond. Because some conversations don't heal, they reopen wounds you've already stitched shut. Instead, I stepped outside with my coffee barefoot on the porch, watching the neighborhood wake up. A dog barked down the street. A car door slammed. Someone laughed. The world kept moving with or without him. And in that small, ordinary moment, I realized freedom doesn't always come with fireworks or grand gestures. Sometimes it's just waking up one morning and realizing you no longer want to check your phone. It's eating breakfast without feeling anxious. It's peace, quiet, steady, earned peace. And that's what freedom looked like for me. It had been almost 2 months since Jack and I last spoke. I'd almost convinced myself he'd finally moved on until the apologies began to arrive. At first, they came slowly, like drops of rain before a storm. A text here, a voicemail there. Then, like clockwork, they started pouring in. "Jack, I can't sleep. I keep seeing your face, Jack. You were right about everything. I just didn't want to admit it. Jack, I know I hurt you. I hate myself for it. Please talk to me." I didn't reply to a single one. I just read them, felt the faint echo of what used to be guilt, and let it fade. Then came the photos us at the beach, him holding my hand at a concert, that blurry selfie from our first road trip, each one captioned with some attempt at nostalgia. Remember this? We were so happy here. No, I was happy there. He was already somewhere else. Then one night, I opened my phone to a voicemail that made me sit still for a moment. His voice was quieter this time, tired, cracked around the edges. Sherry, I know I don't deserve this call, but I need you to hear me out. I was selfish and cruel. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. Tessa was a mistake. Everything was. You were always there for me, and I didn't appreciate it. I thought I was missing out, but the truth is I was missing you. Please, just one coffee, one conversation. I listened to every word, then I deleted it. Because it wasn't closure I needed anymore. It was distance. A week later, I pulled into my driveway after work and froze. There was a car parked across the street, one I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it belonged to a neighbor. Then the driver's side door opened and he stepped out. Jack? He looked nothing like the confident man I'd fallen for. His hair was unkempt, his eyes hollow. He wore a faded hoodie and jeans that didn't fit him right. For a brief second, my heart softened. Then I remembered every cruel thing he'd said every time he made me doubt myself. He walked up to my car window and tapped lightly. I rolled it down halfway. Can we talk? He asked. His voice was smaller than I remembered. About what I said. Calm, distant. I wanted to say sorry, and maybe see if we could start over. Just talk, maybe get coffee sometime. I studied him carefully. Why? He blinked, caught off guard. Because I miss you. Because I was stupid. Because you were good to me, and I ruined it. I nodded slowly. You're right, you did. He stared at me, waiting for more. For forgiveness, maybe for a chance. But I didn't give it. I rolled the window up, shifted into drive, and pulled into my garage. In my rearview mirror, I saw him still standing there in the same spot watching the house that was supposed to be ours. But it wasn't. It never would be. That should have been the end of it. But Jack never handled being forgotten well. The next weekend, he came back this time, dressed up, hair neatly styled, holding a paper bag that looked like pastries from my own bakery. He knocked twice, waited, knocked again. I didn't open the door. You don't have to pretend, Sherry, he called through the wood. I know you still care. You're just trying to punish me. Silence. This isn't you, he continued. You're not cold like this. Still nothing. Eventually, his footsteps faded. Then came the final text. Jack, wow, you really don't give a damn after everything. You're heartless. You didn't deserve me anyway. I was too good for you from day one. And there he was again, the real Jack. The mask had slipped, and underneath all those apologies and tears was the same arrogance that once told me I should be grateful. That was the last message I ever read from him. I blocked his number. Not out of anger, not to prove anything, but because he no longer had a place in my story. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of relief, of lessons of the quiet joy of finally being free. Every morning after that, I stepped onto my porch with coffee in hand, breathing in the sunrise. And every time I whispered the same simple prayer, thank you for letting me lose him before I lost myself completely. 2 months later, I almost forgot what his voice sounded like. The constant buzzing of my phone had stopped, replaced by mornings filled with sunlight, music, and the smell of fresh bread cooling on my counter. My life felt quiet, not in the lonely sense, but in the steady way peace hums when no one's trying to break it. Then one afternoon, Dara called. Hey, there's a small get-together this weekend. Barbecue at Mark's place. You should come. I hesitated. Will he be there? No, she said confidently. Trust me, Jack's not invited. So I went. I brought homemade cupcakes, wore a sundress I'd bought months ago but never had the courage to wear, and told myself it was time to stop living like I was still recovering. The backyard was filled with laughter and music, the smell of grilled food in the air. I hadn't realized how much I missed being around people without tension shadowing every conversation. I was halfway through, chatting with a couple near the drinks table, when I heard a voice behind me, low, familiar. Sherry. I turned. Jack. He looked thinner, like someone who'd been chasing something that kept slipping through his fingers. His eyes softened when they met mine, the same eyes that once made me believe promises he never kept. Hey, he said, almost shy. You look good. Thanks, I replied simply. An awkward silence hung between us, the kind that's filled with everything that'll never be said. He shifted, clearing his throat. So, are you seeing anyone? No, I said with a small smile. I'm just enjoying life. He blinked, clearly caught off guard. That wasn't the answer he wanted. I've been thinking about us, he continued quietly. About how I treated you. I was arrogant. I thought I'd always have you. I was wrong. I took a sip of my drink, calm, detached. Yeah, you were. He looked at me, then, searching my face for some trace of the woman who used to beg him to listen, to care, to choose her. But she was gone, replaced by someone who didn't need his validation to breathe. "Do you ever think about what we had?" he asked, voice soft. I shrugged. "Sometimes. Then I remember what you said before you left, and it gets real easy to forget." His expression cracked, pain flickering across it. "I didn't mean it like that. I was scared. I thought I was missing out." I nodded slowly. "You were." He frowned, confused. "Wait, what?" "You were missing out on someone who actually cared. Someone who saw you as a partner, not a placeholder. You traded that for a lie, and you found out the hard way." For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of laughter from the other side of the yard. "You don't have to be cruel," he whispered. I met his eyes, steady and sure. "I'm not. I'm just done pretending I'm the lucky one." He stood there speechless, the weight of truth settling between us. I placed my cup down on the table beside him. "Take care of yourself, Jack." Then I turned and walked away, not dramatically, not angrily, just peacefully, because real closure doesn't need noise. As I stepped into the golden light of dusk, I realized something profound. Peace isn't empty. It's everything you were once too distracted to notice: the wind brushing through your hair, the laughter of strangers, the feeling of being completely present in your own life. For years, I mistook silence for loneliness. Now I understood silence is what love sounds like when it's finally directed inward. That night when I got home, I sat on my porch with a warm drink and the soft hum of crickets around me. No ghosts, no echoes, no regret. Just peace. And as the first stars began to appear, I smiled to myself and whispered, not bitterly, not proudly, but with simple gratitude, "You said I should be grateful you settled for me. But in the end, I'm grateful I didn't settle for you."